to the 4 main parts, which is going to be the introduction, which includes literature review, research questions, the method, design participants, materials, scoring, data analysis, my results. That section is going to be long, so I'm going to try to get through it as quickly as possible. And my discussion, which is the results of my hypotheses, my implications, limitations, and future research. Off to the introduction. So for my literature review, there's 2 main things I focused on to kind of progress the study forward, which is crime and consequences and effects on decision making, mainly because I did have a knowledge scale, which was what did people know about the consequences for a crime. And so to look at that, you look at the federal and state jurisdictions, the prosecution and conviction, and then sentencing outcomes. So whether they are state or federal level, kind of how they get through the legal system, and then what ends up, whether they get jail or prison time, and the difference between the two, as well as parole or probation, and again, the difference between the two. Motivations for a crime, which can also lean towards somebody's morality, because I did have a morality scale in my research as well. And there's different motivations for people when it comes to a crime. It's personality traits, a person's beliefs. With Lily, it's described as a person's soul. How I interpret that through my research is, how do you describe yourself as a person in morality? So, and it's not always necessarily based off of what you want to do, it's sometimes based off what you have to do. And then effects on decision making, a person's emotional intelligence. They may not necessarily always understand the outcome of the crime or why they're motivated to do the crime. And then different roles trauma has in regards to affecting whether somebody is likely to do a crime. The closest that I found to my study as far as research was a crime and reward model. It was a study that modeled how a promise of a reward influenced people's willingness to commit a crime. And the higher the danger, the greater the reward for it. So I have a total of 4 research questions. So first one, does the gender of a person affect their morality, knowledge, or likelihood of committing a crime? Does a person's academic major affect their knowledge, morality, or likelihood of committing a crime? Does the interaction between a person's gender and their academic major affect their knowledge, morality, or likelihood of committing a crime? And then the last one is a correlation. So does the interaction between a person's knowledge, morality, or likelihood have an effect on each other? My method. My design was a 2x2 factorial with repeated measures within and between subjects. My independent variables included gender, male versus female, an academic major, criminal justice versus non-criminal justice. My independent variables were the stated likelihood to commit a crime, the knowledge and morality of the person. So I was lucky to get a very even participant count, so it was 50% male, 50% female. However, of those 134, it starts to break down in regards to the separation, as 34% were female criminal justice, 27% were male non-criminal justice, 23% were male criminal justice, and 16% were female non-criminal justice. So as far as gender, evenly split. As far as major, not so evenly split. My materials and scoring, I would say had in a consent form, the questionnaire itself. Had a demographics section, which included the gender, major, and location of the person. It also included age, specifically since we were looking at gender and major. The location and age of the person was not taken into account for this. A morality scale that was already pre-made. I took it, it was from FER, a knowledge test, and then a likelihood to commit a crime. The knowledge test was created by me. It was 10 questions. What do you know about what the punishment is for this crime? And then the participant had to answer. The likelihood to commit the crime was a 4-point Likert scale based off those questions. How likely are you to commit this? Then it was administered in person with the prompter present, and it was explained to them that it is multiple parts, the informed consent, the demographics, morality scale, knowledge test, and likelihood. Consent forms were kept separate from the questionnaire for anonymity, and then they were filed under demographic labels. So this is how I scored each of them. So for everyone, the lower you were, you had low morality or low knowledge. And then for likelihood to commit the crime, the lower you were, the higher your likelihood to commit the crime. So it was the only one that was reversed. However, in morality, for each subsection in morality, there was a reverse question that was reverse scored. My data analysis for the first three research questions, was a two-way ANOVA. It examined the main effects of gender and academic major, as well as the interaction between knowledge, morality, or likelihood of committing a crime. An independent t-test was ran to further evaluate the relationship between them. And then a correlation test was ran for the fourth question. My statistical analysis. So we're going to stay here for a minute because the next two slides are a lot of information, but these are all what you really actually. These are the means that you can see in my descriptive statistics. I just thought the graphs looked a little prettier. So the main things that you want to pay attention to is when it comes to male versus female. Females had a higher morality than males when it came to their means, with an exact number of 122.83 compared to a 113.03. And then when it came to knowledge, female non-criminal justice had a lower knowledge mean than male non-criminal justice, with females at an 8.59, and males at a 10.36. Those are the two main ones because they have pretty big outliers. The only other one for criminal justice is also in morality, where we see a lot of differences, is females have a 128.94 mean in morality, and males have a 114.77 in morality. So, where I found my statistical findings that support my research questions happen in each of my subsects for gender, criminal justice versus non-criminal justice, and then the comparison between the two. For gender, there is no statistical significance when it comes to morality or knowledge, as the significance for morality is 0.100, for knowledge 0.107, but for likelihood it's 0.006, which is statistically significant. For CJ versus non-CJ, this is where you do also see statistically significant for morality and likelihood, and it's the only place that you're going to see statistically significant for morality and likelihood. So for morality, it's 0.029. For knowledge, it's 0.197, and then for likelihood, it's 0.014. And then for the comparison between gender and academic major, for morality, it's 0.198. For knowledge, it's 0.500, and then for likelihood, it's 0.042. So this means that through all of them, it is statistically significant that either gender, academic major, or the combination of the two does affect the likelihood of them to commit it, and likelihood of them to commit a crime, and their academic major does have an effect on their morality scale. This is all that just broken down into bullet points. Okay, so for the independent t-test I ran, this broke it down even further specifically to male versus female, where it was found that females have a higher likelihood to commit the crimes than males. So in that particular regard, you have a p-value for females of under 0.001, which is statistically significant. For males, it's 0.786. This is another independent t-test where we compare directly between criminal justice and non-criminal justice, where it's found that it is statistically significant that criminal justice is more likely, let me try that sentence again, where people who are in the criminal justice major are more likely to commit a crime than those in a non-criminal justice major, with a p-value, again, of under 0.001, and with those with the non-criminal justice major with a p-value of 0.675. So for my last one, I did a correlations test. It is found that each of them do correlate to each other. However, their correlations specifically the strongest correlation is really only found between morality and likelihood. It's still statistically significant that there is between morality and knowledge, but it is still weaker than what you're going to find between morality and likelihood. And the weakest is found between knowledge and likelihood. So the R for morality and knowledge was 0.226 with a P of 0.007. For morality and knowledge, morality and likelihood, I already said knowledge. The R was 0.759 with a P of under 0.001. And then for knowledge and likelihood, the R was 0.177 with a P of 0.035. Again, they're all positive, but they're not necessarily all super strong. So overall, for my first 3 research questions, so for research question 1, research question 2, and research question 3, I partially rejected the null. That is because for 1, I only found it in likelihood, but I did not find it in knowledge or morality. For 2, I found it statistically significant in morality and likelihood, but I did not find it in knowledge. For 3, again, I found it only in likelihood and not in the other 2. And then for 4, I rejected the null. So, in summary, the gender and academic major and their interaction all significantly influence the likelihood of committing a crime. A person's morality and legal knowledge do also play roles in kind of like shaping a person's criminal intent, their likelihood to commit the crime, how they perceive it, and what they know about it. And the results do support the existing literature that I did talk in the beginning of the different aspects of a person's criminal behavior and what affects it. So, implications, we've gone through most of this throughout this because I talked a lot, but there are implications for law enforcement as it can improve profiling for suspects because we having a better understanding of a person's criminality, we have more information on them, we have a better understanding, and we're able to provide more informed decisions rather than just using a person's bias to kind of make the best guess. It can enhance investigative techniques. Again, we're understanding your criminal better. We're understanding a person's likelihood and we're understanding a person better. It can also help support early intervention programs because we can go, hi, so these are concerning. How can we further look into these and help provide early intervention programs to maybe prevent that criminality from happening? And then policy awareness. It can enable the creation of evidence-based prevention strategies rather than just throwing something at a wall and hoping it sticks. You understand why rather than just going, this happens because you can't control people. And it offers insight to a person's motivation rather than just, okay, you did it. Here's your punishment. Have fun. So my limitations, they were primarily college students. So I didn't have a wide range of age, which is part of the reason why I didn't include age in regards to, in regards to my study or why I broke it down. A lot of them were in the younger age range. So then you had the gender and a major imbalance. Sorry, I had an overrepresentation of females in the criminal justice compared to other areas. Again, they were mostly aged 18 to 22. They weren't really, I didn't have many other people, so that can also affect somebody's worldviews, somebody's experiences, things of that nature. And then in the survey design, some participants did require clarification on the knowledge section as far as what it meant by what do you know about what the punishment for this is. And it did have to be explained that it's whatever your knowledge is of if you commit domestic violence, what is the punishment for that. So it suggests for your survey instructions to kind of improve that process for them. Recommendations for the future research. increase the diversity of the people, so broaden age, educational, and socioeconomic representation. Refine the moral constructs. It was a very large moral scale, so maybe refining it in a way that kind of pinpoints exactly what part of morality we want to look at. And then also maybe looking at justice orientation and empathy and cultural frameworks, and then consider geographic context. So compare the urban versus rural participants, maybe state location, personal perceptions, things of that nature, and then also how the environment shapes legal knowledge and moral development. So again, that kind of goes with where they're located. Questions, comments, concerns?